Hi, guys.
Hello.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm so glad. How are you today?
I'm fine.
Good. Were you at the service on Friday night?
I was.
Wasn't it exquisitely
It
beautiful?
was very nice.
It was just lovely. The two cantors singing, the three cantors singing together. Oh my goodness. I got goosebumps. Beautiful. Good morning, Cindy.
Cindy, Jerry and I have been corresponding this morning about a book he read. He's probably been raving about it to you, about the Jews of Europe who joined American forces. You're muted.
Muted.
What's the name of it?
You're muted, Cindy.
Sons and Soldiers?
Yeah.
Tell us.
But I got him to watch the movie last night and he'll come tonight to the discussion.
I couldn't find the movie. Where did you see it?
On Prime?
And it's called
Yeah.
Sons and
No,
Soldiers?
no, I'm sorry, The Mole.
Tonight's movie.
Yeah, no.
Or tonight's movie. That's the first time he's participated in it.
Oh, good. Yeah, it will touch a lot of us. But he wrote to me about I think it's only a book about Jews
Yeah.
of Europe called Sons and Soldiers, and no one's made a movie of it yet.
No, he needs to tell the book club, not the movie group.
Oh, he wrote to me.
I know.
Okay, it's a great subject though, and there's lots of other similar history. I wrote to him about the other issues that came up around that. Trying to mobilize the Jews on the run in Europe to fight the Nazis. There's a lot of resistance to it. The book knows more than I. But,
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
It's good to see you all. Let me just get you in the proper gallery. Yes. Okay. That works. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher v'nishkach hamitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot v'divrei Torah. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. I want to begin by saying how happy I am to be here and to see Natalie and Donna. I mean, usually it's one or the other, but now we have both. Well, it's not that I keep track, but that's fine. Last night's Shehecheyanu service, I know that a group of you were on, and Diane Risa told me that you were on the Cantor's Midrash course thing too. I keep track. Cindy, you were there too? As best I can.
I was there. It was magnificent.
Yeah,
Oh,
Doris was there.
okay.
It was magnificent.
No, we had 6 from the old university and 6 from Wilshire, so it was very divided.
It was the most beautiful. It was a concert. It was a magnificent.
I was talking about Thursday's class.
I
Thursday's
thought you were
class,
talking about Shehecheyanu last night. No.
yeah, Thursday's class was outstanding. I know that because Risa loved it. And then Friday evening, I participated, and it was glorious.
Yes, it was.
Just glorious.
Very good.
Those services are recorded, and if you have an hour, 10 minutes, it is really, really, really worth doing.
Yep.
So Friday evening, the Shehecheyanu service, outstanding, beautiful. I think displayed the new strength of the combined situation. And I wanted to mention that because I was kind of thrilled. We are going to move to checking in, and I would like to read a note from Clara Steingold, okay? I got this yesterday, and I think Clara, who has been a regular in our Torah study, something like forever, just like forever, wrote the following. Rabbi, I've had 2 bad falls, one of which injured my left eye.
No.
I had emergency operation on my eye at the Jewelstein Clinic in UCLA. I am unable to see out of that eye. A retinal ophthalmologist was called in, and he will operate yesterday to see if he can save the eye.
Oh my
After
God.
that surgery, there will be a long recuperative period. Needless to say, I will not be in class for some time. I was going to omit this line, the last line, but what the hell? I'm going to read it out loud. I will miss your passion and knowledge of the Torah. I mean, she wrote it, so I might as well read it. Please say a healing prayer for me. Love, Clara Steingold.
Oh God.
Am I hearing extra noise, or is that just, yeah?
No, it's Diane and Doris keep popping up.
Me? No,
Okay, I would just appreciate, yeah, good, thank you.
I had nothing.
El na rafana la. Oh God, we pray you send her healing. I would like to suggest, I know that that Cindy has her address. I do as well. Cindy, can you post it in the chat? And thank you.
Yeah.
And I would just ask, if you're able to do so and comfortable, what does a person need going through such horrific trauma at this point? It is a loving note, just to say, hi, we miss you. The class was terrific. You really missed a good one, or anything you want to say, but express love to Clara. She needs our support. So Cindy is going to post that. Oh, good. Thank you very much.
I'm working on it.
Rabbi, I also want to say that Tanya took a fall and broke her.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Tanya took a fall a week or 2 ago. She's at Berkeley now, recovering, and Judy Gottfried fell in her house and broke her shoulder. So you got to be so careful out there. Everybody's falling and really injuring themselves badly. I'm sorry about Claire. I'll be in touch with her.
Thank you very much. Wow, I mean, it's a lot. Susie? You're muted. You're still muted. Still muted.
Minute, okay.
Oh.
If we wanted to call Claire, do you know if, like, is that her cell phone number that you're giving us?
No, I gave the address, but she's called me. So, I mean, I don't know about yesterday, but.
I wrote to Clara. I asked her for her cell phone number. If I get it from her, which means in a few days.
I'll post it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are a community, and Clara is a pillar of our community, and this is important. More checking in. I would like to quietly point out that I am now sleeping with an 80-year-old woman. Thanks, Harv. Risa's birthday was yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, it's kind of
Isn't it today?
pardon?
I thought her birthday was the 5th.
It's today is what I meant. But I started celebrating it yesterday because
Okay.
Israel, her birthday hit 10 hours earlier.
Got it.
And I want to tell you that her reaction to my extending the birthday to another 10 hours was not totally positive, but my wounds will heal. she didn't accept my explanation. So it's June 5th, it is today, and that's pretty wild. I also would like to mention, I did post this on Facebook, with all the trouble that Israel is having, and so many of us are so concerned about what's going on and what's not going on. A little light of happiness. Don't be upset if all I have on this is good news. I'll try to get more bad news for next week. But Isaac Herzog, the new 11th president of Israel, is a winner. He is absolutely a terrific guy. Among Israel's political leaders in the charisma campaign, like at the very top, you have high charisma. Bougie Herzog is at the bottom of that. He is a quiet, non-effusive, solid, brilliant, effective political leader. And he is moderate. He is open to religious pluralism. He is on our side on, I don't know, I would guess most issues, all issues, I don't know. So at the very least, Israel now has, God willing, for the next 7 years, in my eyes, a superb president. So that's one piece. And I just, want to be grateful for that. And you're probably going to ask, wow, you sound like you know him personally. Bougie's a friend. Bougie Herzog is a friend of mine. And one of the glorious days of my life was to put on a Bougie Herzog shirt and be his representative at a Jerusalem polling place. That was probably my greatest political achievement. And in that campaign, he didn't win. Now, but in any event, with all the stuff going on, please, if someone's, oh, Israel, come back with, but at least their president is a terrific person, an honest person, a person whose values are much aligned with ours. Okay, Effie?
Yes, what is the chances of keeping his group together? I mean, he has a diverse set of people.
We're talking different things, Effie. Effie, he is president.
Oh, president, excuse me.
President of the country, and he will be president, God willing, for 7 years. And that's it. Okay. So now, checking in. I hope for good things, but difficult things as well. Howard.
I just wanted to, you mentioned the idea of the new increased strength after the merger with Wilshire Boulevard. And I just wanted to mention that I found out my couple of grandchildren are going to be taking the Wilshire confirmation class, which is really impressive. They're going to have many of the different clergy that were in the service last night are going to teach 2 or 3 classes each, and each one is going to talk about a subject of their own choice, something that they really want to talk to the kids about. So they're really going all out, I think, to improve, keep some of these kids within the fold as they go to college and so on. Also, I have to mention the religious school director. It was her idea, Kathy Gordon, and she happens to be my second cousin, so I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, I think that is terrific. This is really good stuff that's happening. And there is, in our world, I'm not going to spend the hour on this, there are congregations closing, shrinking, disappearing. There are people disaffiliating. And we are part of a dynamic, growing community. And I would have to ask you, what could possibly be wrong with a congregation with 8 rabbis and cantors? I mean, to me, that's heaven. That's the best there can be. Okay, other Cindy.
I don't know if anyone can comment on this. There was a very upsetting article in the Times about the teachers union condemning Israel and supporting Palestine. Does anyone know anything on that?
I'm not competent to comment other than what I read. So Cindy, in other words, I have nothing new that I could add.
Really don't know why it's their business.
San Francisco did it first. You
Yeah.
might try sending an email to Nick Melvoin. He might shed some light on it.
Yeah, it's complicated out there, Cindy. And what I learned, I could even date it. What I learned in the 1980s, when I was heavily involved in a whole variety of political things, that if you want to understand why a group or a person takes a particular stance, be certain that you are aware of the people and the groups with whom your individual or group happens to be in close relationship. In other words, why did Joe Cohn vote this way at the Temple Board is sometimes more easily understandable if you realize that Joe is in a business arrangement with Frank Shapiro. And Frank needed Joe to vote a certain way, and it happens. A lot of these situations are quid pro quo deals. I need you on this, you need me on this, vote this. It's complicated. It just, thank you for raising it, and complicated. Any other checking in before we move on? Okay. Calendar. Jim is probably aware that the Film Society is meeting tonight. 1 minute on this, Jim. You're muted. Okay.
I know.
We're going to count those seconds against your minute.
Okay. I want to chime in on the good news about Wilshire Boulevard and how welcoming they've been. If you saw the announcement yesterday, we now have 3 films after tonight that are scheduled, so you can plan ahead. The evenings are announced. We won't change them. We won't change the films. So it's a very exciting time for us that we can now start planning ahead instead of doing it week to week. Tonight's discussion is called The Mole Agent. It's actually a documentary inside a nursing home of mostly senior women. And a detective agency has hired an 80-year-old man to go undercover at the nursing home to find out if someone is stealing from a patient there. And it's very bittersweet. It's funny. It's sad. It's very light touch. It has a great message. And if any of us have ever cared for a parent or a senior person who has dementia or Alzheimer's or just old age, this will resonate a great deal with you about what their daily life is like and how this man comes in and charms them all and exposes what the real issues are there. It's tonight at 7:30.
Thank you.
It's very good. I look forward to the discussion tonight.
Jim,
Family, Susie?
Where can we see it?
Jim, when I look on Netflix, it's listed as The Mole movie. It's listed as The Mole Prime. It's listed 4 times.
Susie, it's on Prime, not on
It's on Amazon.
Which one should I click on?
Prime,
It's on Amazon Prime.
not on Netflix.
Okay.
Amazon-
I know
Amazon
that, but on Prime, it's listed 4 times.
The bright yellow one.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Amazon, you know Amazon, it has now replaced the United States government in controlling our lives. So everyone here probably recognizes Amazon. When I was in the Army, we were told that when we see a Jeep parked at curbside with the general or a general's flag, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, whatever, a flag flying from that Jeep indicating that it's a general's Jeep, we, even though I'm captain, we had to stop and salute the Jeep. And it was part of the culture. And besides, I wanted everyone to be my friend until I completed my 2 years and got out safely. So I saluted the damn Jeep. But now I salute Amazon Prime delivery trucks. Okay. Now, I want to mention again, I mentioned last week, don't miss this. June 9th, 5 p.m., Wednesday, June 9th, 5 p.m., on a program sponsored by Jews United for Democracy and Justice, JUDJ, and they can be found at JUDJ. Deborah Lipstadt is going to speak about anti-Semitism. Folks, you know, first of all, A, I don't get any money for promoting this. B, it's going to be fabulous. Deborah Lipstadt is fabulous. And you want a non-hysterical understanding of where anti-Semitism is in the world right now. I haven't seen the program. I'm going to be there with Risa. I hope that you will find it. It's free. All you have to do is go to JUDJ and you have to register, and then they will give you a free ticket to get in. So that's June 9th. And shortly afterwards, when we have Chevra Torah, I will accept your expressions of gratitude. So that'll be very nice. My last thing in terms of calendar is June 14th is likely to be the vote on the new Israeli government. I think that it's pretty well set, June 14th. And that, I am not a crazy person optimist. I am willing to say I'm a little bit hopeful that good things may flow. Okay, we're going to get into Numbers chapter 13, beginning with, it'll be with verse 1, but actually we're going to start a little bit ahead. We have talked about in Shlach, we have talked about the spies before. We've actually spent 2 or 3 years, my notes indicate, exploring who the spies were, why they were spies, what was involved, who wanted them, did Moses want them, did the people want them, and who were Joshua and Caleb, the guys who brought back the 2 reports. And then we would mention, yes, the symbol of the Israeli Department of Tourism is 2 spies with a long stick and a huge cluster of grapes between. That comes from this Sedra, Caleb and Joshua, bringing back proof of the richness of Canaanite soil and the beauty of the country, and therefore a symbol of Israeli tourism. We have that. I continue to try to learn all that I don't know about the Sedra, about the Bible, about ancient Israelite history. I am now more willing, and you know, at old age, it's hard to be more willing to do anything except sit and maybe nap. I am now more willing to look for political explanations for the stories that were created and shared in the biblical text. Dr. Ashkenazi certainly has opened my eyes to the books of Samuel and Kings as being heavily expressions of political activity. I choose to view the story of the spies, and I could be totally wrong on this, as a story written hundreds of years later from a putative date, retrojecting the needs of the present into the past, so that when we see discussions of the spies and the anguish of the people and all the complications, instead of reading it as something that occurred during the Exodus, which you know I have issues with in terms of historicity, I have come to see this maybe as a time hundreds of years later, when this was written and put down, that the people needed a chance to show that with certain values and certain attitudes, we can overcome our current political challenges. I know this is a different way of looking at it, and I accept that. And there may be people here besides Effie who totally disagree with me. And I accept that. I mean, Effie's been trying to correct me now since 2014, and I wish him luck. But 10 spies come back and say, our enemies are overwhelming. Call them giants, call them whatever. I'm not kidding. Whatever they are overwhelming. And if you do a cost-benefit analysis, we lose. We can't defeat them. They are big. They are harsh. Yeah, the land is rich. Okay, cool. But we can't defeat them. Caleb and Joshua, representing the governing establishment. Don't forget that Joshua replaces Moses. So representing the ongoing story of Jewish leadership says there are things that we can do if we do two things: trust in God and trust in ourselves. We can overcome them. We can do that. And when I read the story this year, I find myself looking not at 12 people in the desert, but hundreds of years later in the Israelite kingdom, when there is a real challenge to the possibility that the Jewish political entity could survive. And the story, I use the word retrojection, and the story is taking today, writing it as if it happened yesterday, and proving that with the right attitude, we can overcome anything. And then, as I did Thursday, I thought this was kind of brilliant. As I did Thursday, I mentioned what the prophet Jeremiah did when the kingdom was about to be overrun by Israel's enemies. And Jeremiah went out and bought a piece of land, got a land deed, bury it in a place where either he or his descendants, he believed, were going to be able to come back, dig it up, take possession of the property, and the Jewish state would continue. It's that kind of fear and conflict retrojected into the desert experience that we are reading about today. I'm going to take a deep breath for vicious personal attacks and questions of a more polite nature. Any thoughts or comments? Please. This is a totally different way to read what's going on here. And I know that this is used as the excuse, the rationale for the 40 years wandering in the desert. Brad, you have your hand up?
Well, you know, I have maybe a little different perspective on this. What strikes me as you read this passage is that it's a commentary, a philosophical commentary on the reliability of our senses. Because we're told repeatedly that they're going up. They're going up. The spies are going up to view this people. And when you're think of a child, a little child looking up at an adult. If you're from that perspective, that adult seems like a giant. And you know, and of course in philosophy it's been a huge issue over the centuries, is what what kind of faith do we put in our senses in terms of leading us to knowledge? And here, I think what this story is telling us is that our senses are not reliable, and what we need to rely upon is our faith instead.
And I would just add to that, our faith in God or forces and our faith in ourselves. Two kinds of faith. Beautiful comment. Other comments, please. Okay, Penina. We can't hear you. Lo shomim, lo makshivim. Penina.
Yeah, okay. We know that by the time that they were ready to get in, they had to raise flags and be divided into the tribes that they belonged to. And they said that they should raise their flags when the time came for them with Joshua to get in there and join the rest of the tribes who never left to go down to Egypt, remained there to live. So there were Israelites or Jewish or whatever, I don't know how we're going to call them at that time, Hebrews, that still remained in the land, because only 70 went down to Egypt. And then 600,000 came back because many of them were the people that joined them and chose to be with Moses and live. So the problem, I think, is not just them being able to overcome the other nations that lived at the time there, also whether they're going to be a help or a minus for the ones who are already there. So this is a question that a lot of times when we are talking about re-entering, we are thinking about re-entering a place that was always ours and never also maybe other people, but always ours also. And this is something that a lot of times when we read the stories of the Bible and we're looking at 600,000 people ready to get in there, it's something that I think even the world today is forgetting, that there was always Hebrews there and always tribes that never left, and from the time of Abraham. And it wasn't a matter of entering something that was totally not Jewish.
So let me just come in, Penina, and say that your perspective that the Israelites coming under Joshua into the land, many scholars today accept without it being heavy controversy that there were many of their cousins, whatever the relationship, family in the land, and it was a part of the reason why the Israelites could conquer the land was that they already had family, mishpacha, in the land who worked with them. And actually, I don't think that today that's a very controversial position. In other words, I think that that's fairly well accepted among scholars, that the only thing I'd say to you, Penina, God forbid, chas v'shalom, it's only 600,000 men, but I want to count the women too, okay?
Right.
Okay,
People.
so they
I would
all
say
came
people.
in.
Yes.
Yeah, 600,000 men, not important. The women came in too, and they were not. Okay, I just wanted to take that.
Well, today the women are in the Israeli army. We know that.
Okay, yeah. Steve?
I just want to say, how could it be otherwise? Because unless I'm mistaken, only Joseph's family came to Egypt, his father and his brothers. And obviously, it seems obvious to me anyway, that they were not the only members of the tribe back in Canaan from whence they came. So the vast majority of people, it seems, never came to Egypt. They didn't lead an exodus to Egypt, only away from Egypt.
Yeah, and my focus is not going to be on that particular point. It's going to be on the retrojection element. But I agree with you. It says 70 plus people came down to Egypt. Pharaoh, God love him, said they multiply like bugs. Vayishritzu. They're shrutzim and shkutzim. They're bugs, and they multiply. But Steve, over 200 or 300 years, they didn't multiply from 70 to 3 million
600.
or 2 million.
Not only that, the babies were thrown into the river. Remember, they were
Yeah.
told Pharaoh commanded to throw the boys into the river.
Yeah,
The
I think
camp.
that was, by the way, a feminist commentary where the women said, you know, if you get rid of all the boys, life would be a lot better. But that's another discussion for another day. Okay. But yeah, Steve, certainly agree with you on the numbers, but I just want to try to focus on, if we're going to understand this text, to see it as a political statement, as a statement of what we would call chizuk, strengthening. Do it this way, and there is very little we cannot achieve. Chapter 14, verse 3, which is in the Women's Commentary 875, Plout 982, chapter 14, verse 3 of Numbers. One of the things that strikes me here, verse 4, chapter 14. I'll read the entire verse. And to me, this is critically large. And they said to one another, let us head back for Egypt, to Egypt. For Egypt. For Egypt. Why for Egypt? Let us head back for Egypt. I don't know why it says for Egypt. It should be to Egypt, but forget that I'm picky. Why is this such a huge comment? The people in saying we can't do it, let's go back to Egypt. Why is this single little sentence so powerfully important right now in the text? Why? What are the people saying? What's the implication of let's go back to Egypt? Donna.
Well, they just received the 10 commandments among all the thunder and the this and the that. And about 5 minutes later, they've decided, forget it. It's not worth it. Let's go back. So I think it speaks to the very short memory of people and what have you done for me lately, God? And
I like that. Thank you. Any other comments, Effie?
Yes. After the Civil War, a lot of the slaves in the South were freed, but they didn't know what to do. So they went back to where they were living. They just stayed there because they didn't know what to do. So the past that you know something about, you have some idea what you did, you know how bad it was, but at least you knew the badness of the place.
Terrific. I am sad to say I totally agree with you. Marina.
The known stability, even if it's imperfect, sometimes is less scary than unknown uncertainty, unknown future. And people tend to embellish what they had before, remembering only the better parts as opposed to the hardships of today, and thus regrets of their decisions.
Yes, yes. And by the way, let's not hesitate to apply it to the world today. Okay, I mean, Marina, totally correct. Effie, totally correct in your perspective back then, but that kind of a lesson isn't an old lesson. That's a new lesson too. Radically reshaping the present is risky and unsettling and frightening. And oh my God, I mean, we have it so good here. What if we extend votes to women? That could mess up everything that we have. And you have a dozen or 20 or 30 examples of yeah, this would be a good change, but it could disrupt everything. Let us go back to Egypt is a rejection of everything that has occurred to the Israelites. And let us go back to Egypt is a death knell to the Israelite experience. If they would go back to Egypt, this story would never be written, and Jews would not be eating bagels and lox on Sunday. I mean, it would be a total catastrophe, a total catastrophe. Any other thoughts? We're going to move on, but this line, short, Merle.
I have a question.
Well, 1 second, Merle.
The fear of moving ahead, even in today's world, I'm sure there were people between the two congregations with the merger that the fear of losing what they already had for however many years that they belonged, rather than thinking things will get better, we will have more opportunity. The fear of the congregation that I belong to here, where they're in the process of maybe selling the building and they have nowhere to go. And the fact that our senior rabbi has left to move back to LA, and nobody knows, the search committee hasn't started yet. And there's fears about where does the money come from when we sell the building and what's the money go to? All those are fears just like they had all those years ago. The fear of moving on is frightening. And if we just stay the way we are, nobody will get in our way and we'll have whatever we want the way we want it.
That's good. By the way, your rabbi, senior rabbi, moved to LA to become senior rabbi of Temple Israel of Hollywood.
Right.
And your cantor is one of my students. Not in cantorizing, but in getting through HUC.
Ross is good.
He's a beautiful person. Okay, Howard, and then Susie.
This particular sentence also, it's like heresy. They're saying let's appoint a chief. In other words, it's actually sedition, or it's not up to them to appoint a chief. That comes from God.
Have you ever seen, and I know I've talked about it here before, the Crumb illustrated version of Genesis? By the way, CRUMB, it is masterful. It is masterful. And I love it. I treasure my copy. And why do I mention that, Howard? Because if Crumb were illustrating the situation, I can see some of the guys from January 6th with the horns and the hats and all this kind of stuff. That's how Crumb would illustrate what was going on with the Israelites there. They were overthrowing the entire establishment, or they were trying to. Out of fear. Out of fear. Yes, very good. Susie.
I have a question that's puzzling me, and Caleb and Joshua, I really believe they were so motivated. They had so much faith. I don't understand how they could have come, not Caleb and Joshua, all the rest of them could have come that far and had so many obstacles and get that very close, send in the spies who really didn't have anything concrete to tell them except that they were big. And Caleb and Joshua came back and said, in the women's commentary, if I could take 1 second to read this, on page 876, it's very beautiful. They say, the land that we traveled and scouted is an exceedingly good land. If pleased with us, will bring us into the land, a land that flows with milk and honey, and give it to us. Only you must not rebel against God. Have no fear then of the people of the country, for they are our prey. Their protection has departed from them, but God is with us. Have no fear of them, as the whole community threatened to pelt them with stones. Now, you told us, Rabbi, in your commentary a few minutes ago, that their mishpucha was there. were the people that were already there fighting with the Mishpucha that were waiting to come?
There were family tribes closely related in the land already.
Okay, and were they being discriminated against?
No, not as far as I'm aware. Tamara, you would be able to do better on this than I can, but my knowledge is they were part of the landscape. Tamara?
I think we are combining two different stories. There is what the archaeologists tell us the actual history was, and then we have the story, which, as you said, is a later reinterpretation of our history. And so the Israelites in the land are not part of our story. So I would not try to make this parasha fit the archaeological information, because it doesn't. So the people, the Israelites in the land are not part of the story. And no, there is no conflict. You know, there are different ways of how we even emerged in the land. But it is helpful to separate the story from the so-called history.
Thank you. Separate the story.
I wouldn't worry about the Israelites in the land for our purpose.
Okay. I thank you for that. Thank you. Brad.
Unmute.
He's trying.
Sorry about that. You know, a couple sentences before they say, if only we had died in the land of Egypt. And now they're talking about going back to Egypt. I think the message here is that at this particular moment, they are totally irrational. This is not, and it's an irrationality stemming, as you said, from fear. So they're grasping at straws.
It's a desperate time. Doris. Doris, you had your hand up or not?
I did not, sorry.
I thought so you're just waving at me. I'll wave back. Okay.
No, the only thing that comes to mind is a known devil is better than an unknown devil, and maybe that's kind of,
yeah,
they were thinking here, hey, let's go back where we know it. We don't know what's ahead of us. What the heck? Let's stay here and do what we can do.
That is certainly true. Mara and then Penina. And David.
I have a question. I don't know if it's relevant or not. I have read, and I can't recall the author, A History of Ancient Israel. And in that, there's an explanation that if you want to call them Jews in ancient Palestine or Canaan weren't necessarily observant Jews, that they were still wedded to somewhat to more idolatrous beliefs. And so I'm just wondering if that's the case and how that connects to the notion of crossing into the land of Canaan or Israel and continuing this new religion of Judaism.
You have opened such a door that if I walk through it, I'm going to get pilloried. Then again, so what, right? If we have the vision of 3 million Chabadniks standing outside the borders of Canaan, waiting to come in, wrapped in tefillin, davening, you know, and this is the way we always have been, that's probably not exactly true. So so yes, Mara, I'm agreeing with that. But more than that, I remember when my teachers made comments like the Jews really weren't monotheists for a long time in the Israelite experience. We were not, I mean, if you bother to take the Bible as the Torah as historical, take that for a moment as history. That history does not provide a picture of the Israelite people as monotheists, let alone as pious believers in the God of the covenant. Not. You know, you want to go to late Isaiah? Maybe. And maybe beyond that, you want to go to the Second Temple before real monotheism is dominant? So the notion of the Israelites being the way we think today they ought to be in their religious behavior is way not possible. So you could say then, why should they trust in a covenant? And the answer is, yeah. Who invented the covenant? Where did that come from? Did the people know about it in the early stages? Probably not. The covenant is something that was created as a means of binding the people together by shaping an old story of we were at Sinai and God said and we said Na'aseh v'nishma, all these good things. It took time. Well, oh yeah. Instead of monotheists, we were henotheists. Is that the word? That like some Egyptians, we had maybe one God and other gods. When we read Exodus chapter 15 and have to break our teeth in reinterpreting it, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. And then someone said, oh, they don't mean Elim, they mean whatever, the gods that people worship, as opposed to there are other gods. And we have to go through contortions to make the Israelites religious the way we want them to be religious. Mara, please go on, if I have veered from where you were.
No, I was just thinking, taking that one step further, and this doesn't reflect my beliefs, but then I want to say, when we say Israel is our land, that we deserve to have a state of Israel, then how does all this, if you are someone who doesn't believe that the Torah was written by God, then how do you say that we as Jews have the right to the land of Israel? And this doesn't reflect my beliefs.
You muted yourself.
No.
To arise if the history is as you just described it.
So disregard what I believe the history to be, because it does get in the way of Zionist belief. On the other hand, Mara, for me, in a short answer, the land has been ours for thousands of years because of our physical presence there, because of our centering and discovering and developing our sense of nationhood, unity there, because of our shared experiences, which we bear in our literature, in our prayers, and everything else. It's there. Now, Mara, I would like everyone to mute their sound so they don't hear me. I'll just speak to you. Mara, in no way do I believe in an explicit covenant between God and the Israelites promising the land to the Israelites, even conditionally. That is not part of my belief system. And I can't say that in public because I don't want to get hurt. I'm very sensitive. The covenant is one of those devices used by thoughtful, spiritual-minded people to unify us in a relationship with the eternal. That's different from saying at Mount Sinai, thunder and lightning, and Grubhub delivered the Torah right there, right out in the middle of the desert. And it didn't happen that way. It didn't happen that way. But I have no problem, Mara, saying that we have been part of that land and that land has been part of us for, give me a number, 2,500 more, I don't know, give me a number, years. That's sufficient for me to say we are stakeholders in that land. I don't need, and as a matter of fact, in political discussions, I have never said, and I never will say, that the land is ours because God promised it. Because there are 100 other people who can speak about other promises embedded in their literature, and I don't want to have to deal with that. I want to deal with 2,500 years of obsessive connection with the land. That's our claim. The claim of being there. And of course, I will be outside my apartment at 10:05. You want to come drive by and throw stones? You shouldn't be driving on Shabbos. Okay, I see Steve Miller. I saw Merle. Did you have Donna? Okay, Steve Miller.
It seems to me, why aren't they considering a third option? At times, they have gold, they have lots of animals because they're able to sacrifice them. You don't have to go back to Egypt and slavery. You can set up wherever you are without confronting conflagration by moving forward. Why is that never considered as an option?
Have you ever been in the Sinai Desert?
No, but people have lived there.
Yeah, and we call them Bedouin, and they're lovely people. I remember wandering a number of times through the Sinai Desert, sometimes wandering, sometimes with a guide, and it's not a particularly comfortable place. And also, I'm not going to abide with a conversation about how rich the Israelites were and the gold and the animals. That's all retrojection. You know that, and I know that, and you're pulling my cord with that question. And I want to publicly acknowledge I see you. Okay.
But lots of things are better than slavery. I mean, it just seems to me there have to be a number of choices.
Sure.
Even if they don't go into that land, as they move toward that land, there are plenty of empty areas where they could set up camp.
Yeah, and do you ever hear the name Mordecai Emanuel Noah? Does that name strike a bell? Mordecai Emanuel Noah? He was the gentleman who tried to establish Zion on an island in the Niagara River outside of Buffalo. The big tourist spot. I mean, they could have done very well there. But Mordecai Emanuel Noah is a real person, his American Zionism was to establish in this island in the Niagara River, the new Zion. It was an empty place. It might have worked out. I've got to get to a point here. So I'm going to, David, a quick comment, Donna, a quick question. Then I have 2 minutes I want to hit. Okay, but Panina, it's got to be short. David.
Oh.
David, come on, I haven't heard your voice today.
You know, you started out by saying the whole perspective of this is it's a retrojection. And then Tamara pointed out that you have to separate the history from the story. The people who wrote the Torah were really good writers and redactors. This is all a story. a story to make the point, I mean, it's why they make them people hysterical, why they make these outrageous claims about what life is like in Egypt. It's why the 10 spies get killed immediately. It's all made to make the point is the two brave guys who saw what was possible. That's what the story's about.
And we should be like them. Okay, great. Okay, Penina, quick, and then I have this gem. I have to give you a gem, please.
Okay. First of all, we were offered Uganda, and Israel said no. That's number one. Number two, I think the story is the emergence of a new leader. They were old, they were tired, and it was a leading story that Joshua emerges as a leader. That's it.
Beautiful, beautiful, Penina. Mea chuz, ani model lach. Fine. Okay, now, here is my thing. Next week, we're going to be reading the story of Korach, right? Korach va'adato. Korach and his assembly in armed rebellion against Moses. And how does Moses respond? To put it simply, they ended up getting swallowed up in the earth, alive. Boom! Moses was not, yeah, thank you, Donna. Yes, Moses, we have a lot of people demonstrating how they were swallowed up. This is an active group, it's like exercise. Okay, now, Moses next week is affected by a challenge. And what does he do? He pretty much crushes the challenge and the challengers. What does Moses do here when the people are following the 10 and not the 2? What is Moshe Rabbeinu, the Lemelech, what is he doing? He throws himself down on his knees and he prostrates himself before God. Gewalt Yidden. What are you doing? He cries out in ancient Aramaic. He loses it. He loses it. The Moses in this week is so unlike the Moses of next week. And I want to know why. I want to know why. Next week he goes out and, oh, okay, nice going, Korach. Good, you're dead. You're dead. You're dead. Fine. This week, yeah, this week, not so. It is, to me, why is falling on your faces better than opening up the land? Moses was going to be lynched. Aaron was going to be lynched. Or some rabbis believe it wasn't trying to stone Moses and Aaron. Maybe they were trying to stone Caleb and Joshua. Fine. It was awful. And we ought to be aware of the difference between the 2 weeks and different ways to respond to conflict and challenge. This week, almost in a passive aggressive way, technically following what David said, following the story, you're going to stay in the desert for another 38 years until you all die. Next week, you're all going to die now. And it's 2 different ways to handle the conflict. And I love these stories. By the way, in case you want to hold on to something which is a little bit funny, do you know why Caleb and Joshua felt that the Israelites could conquer the land? I'm glad you asked. Because Job lived in the land and his presence as a righteous person protected the land. But Job, on seeing the Israelites come, pulled out his support And Joshua and Caleb knew this, and therefore they knew the land could be conquered. This is about as far-fetched and unchronological, unscientific. When I read that, I was just glad that I wasn't holding a glass of liquid. Job was in Canaan protecting the Canaanites. There's so much not possible in that sentence. Have a wonderful week. Love you. Shabbat shalom. Well, next week we're going to follow Korach and see how really tough leaders should act. Shabbat shalom. and
Shabbat
love.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. Howard, we have a meeting Sunday night?
Iffy.
Yeah, we have a meeting Sunday night?